So welcome. Today I will talk about MySQL 8. Who already tried MySQL 8 here? 1, 2 guys, 3, okay, thank you. So in MySQL 8 we have implemented a document store, and I want to talk to you about this document store we have in MySQL 8 and what are all the benefits to use MySQL as a document store. Save the date, we have open world for people who are interested to go to San Francisco. It will be in October. This slide is always the same, but it's very important. So I'll let you give you some seconds to read it. Yes?
You say that in MySQL 8 we have a store, but is it the same that we have in MySQL 5.7?
It is not there is the JSON data part that is there, but in MySQL 7, not all plugins were compatible with it. You need everything. So here, it's more advanced. So it's GA. In 5.7, you had some piece of it, but they were not GA. Now in MySQL 8 is GA. Everything and all pieces are there to make it including connectors. Yes, I will go back on that after. But I can already answer. People, maybe if you have followed the MySQL 8 release cycle, right? We were like release candidate with 8.0.03, 8.0.04, and then we jumped to 8.0.11. And this is the reason why we made this big jump. It's because some connectors were already in other version, like 8.0.6 and stuff like that. And we want to have everything on the same version. So we moved to 8.0.11, which is the GA for the connectors and the MySQL 8. So who I am Frederic Descamps. So you can hear I speak French, but I'm not from France. I'm from Belgium. We're going to win the World Cup. I am on Twitter. I'm MySQL evangelist. I'm hacking MySQL since a lot of time. And I'm also a DevOps believer. So if you have DevOps questions, just ask me. And I have a blog where you can find also a lot of information about MySQL. So let's start with relational databases. So relational databases is what you are using MySQL usually, right? So when you are using MySQL, you have these tables and this relation between your tables, and it is strong for data integrity, right? It's recommended to normalize your data. You have constraints with foreign keys. You can build that when you have a relational database. You have also ACID compliant. So it's atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, all that you can have using MySQL. Watch out in MySQL, you have this if you use a transactional engine only, and the most, let's say, the best transactional engine that is provided with MySQL, it's InnoDB. So if you use MyXAM, you are not ACID compliant, watch out. You should not use MyXAM anyway. So it's time to move away of it. So, and you have transactions in relational databases, and there is also SQL. So SQL, I know people doesn't like SQL, but it's very a powerful query language, right? It's very. If people say, "Oh, what's the best language you are using? Is it C? Is it PHP? Is it Perl?" I would tell them, "Oh, it's SQL. SQL is there for a long time, and I don't think it will disappear, even if I will show you how you can use MySQL without SQL. SQL, it's very powerful. And one evidence of this is that some other document store now are thinking about, oh, how can we bring or can we have SQL inside of our document store, because SQL is very powerful and we are not able to achieve what we want to do without it. So now about NoSQL databases. So we have seen what, let's say, a small description of relational databases. Now I want to give you a small description of NoSQL databases and why people are using them. First of all, it's schemaless. You have no schema anymore, so you can port your data and you don't have to design anything in advance. No normalization, no foreign keys, no data type, and of course, when you don't have all this stuff, you can start coding, because what we are also targeting here is the developers. You can start coding very quickly because you don't have to think about, oh, should I put my data in my tables or should I design my tables? And one of the things here is that I think if you are a developer or if you have made some code, I'm almost sure that at least one time you already create your design, create your code, and while coding say, oh, if I had this column there, or if I had this table, and do it again. With the document store, this is not needed. So if you need to do some prototype, it's very easy also to do. It's very quick, and you can change the data structure very quickly also. So the structure is very easy. There is also embedded arrays and objects inside of the JSON documents. So it's also, sometimes it's very complicated to design a model for your data. With NoSQL, you can store your object without having to think about this, right? And also, something I like, not everybody likes it, but one thing I hate, it's ORM. ORM I don't like. As a MySQL DBA, this is a mess. I don't know who has a very good experience with any ORM, but most of the time it creates you queries that you don't understand, or is joining tables that you don't even need in the result set. So ORM, it's very a mess. I don't know any good ORM. I haven't seen them. If you have one good candidate, just let me know. I will have a look at it. But ORM, it's a mess for me. And with document store, you can store your objects. So your application creates this object and store them. There is no need to have this mapping needed to store the data. So it's very nice. And also you can use JSON. JSON document, it's very close to the front end. It's native in JavaScript, which is a very popular language currently. And also it's very easy to learn. So if you see a document, it's not complicated. So now let's go forward, and if you're a MySQL DBA, this is how you see your data, right? Who is MySQL DBA here? Not that much, okay, some. Who are using just documents? Document store people, not much, okay. So this is how you see your data, right? And this is how the developers see the data. And this is for these people that we try to, let's say, to convince them to use the document store. So when I go to talk about MySQL on universities or high schools, most of the time I see the database teacher says, well, they don't want to learn SQL, it's a mess, it's very complicated for them. They want something much faster, like a document store and stuff like that. And this is for these people that we made this work. It's to give them a solution to store their data. So their question was, we'll be able to provide both SQL and NoSQL in one very stable platform that has proven its stability, so something not new to learn for everybody, at least not for the operators, and with a very large community ecosystem. So if we could provide that, we will succeed, right? So when we were thinking about DBMS or NoSQL, in MySQL we cite, why not both? Why couldn't we provide to developers the possibility to use their NoSQL data, so to store data, to read data from it, but also give the possibility to still use relational databases when needed and SQL when needed, right? So this is where we made the MySQL document store, where the SQL is no optional. So if you don't want it, you are not needed to use it, but if you want it, you can still use it. So we try to make this solution for everybody, for developers. So we have schemaless. For them, they don't have to take care about schemas design. It's very rapid prototyping. They have very simple API because they will use CRUD operation. I will tell you what are CRUD operation after. Document model, their starter model, but they have also transaction. For operation, performance, management, visibility, they know that. It's the same as MySQL. Nothing has changed there. So you can still use all the tool or what you are using, and you have all the performance schema tables. Everything is there. You can see everything. Robust replication and backups and restore. So all the backup methods you are using for your RDBMS, you can still use it for document store. If you are using replication, you will use replication at the same way, same design, nothing new there. So very easy. You don't need to train your operation or your DBAs to a new product. Tooling ecosystem, everybody knows it. All the tools are there, like Giuseppe DB deployer for document store. You will be able to deploy machines like that. If you want to do some I don't know, operation for schema design, like Ghost from Shlomi, you can still use that too, right? For business owner, they don't lose their data because we are ACID compliant. Not all document store are ACID compliant. You can lose data, watch out. Here, it's not the case. You have schemaless, your schema, and you can do a lot of other stuff. But rapid development is what we are targeting, right? So now let's talk about the solution of MySQL document store, what it is, right? So it is when SQL and NoSQL met together, right? So in 5.7.6, we started to have this JSON data type. So now in MySQL, we have a specific data type. So it's not a blob, it's not a text, it's a data type for JSON, right? So where we can store this data. We don't need SQL. There is no schema, so it's very easy to do. We need to use the X DevAPI to get the data. This is not mandatory, but I will show you how it is. Something very important, the document can be 1 GB of data. So most of, let's say, the most used or the most popular document store now has a limitation of 16 megabytes. Personally, I was thinking, oh, 16 megabytes for a document is so big already. And I saw a lot of people having issue with, we want more than 16 megabytes. So we provide 1 gigabyte for one document. So all the programming language, the new modern ones are there. And, but you can also work on relational tables, and this is what I want to show you today. And it's on MySQL technology, right? So to be able to use the document store, we have a new X DevAPI. So it's, you need to have connectors to connect to it. And all the new connectors that are shipped with MySQL, if you go to the latest version, are compatible. And we are also working with communities to make them support on other too. So for example, I have contact with the Go community to also make something that understand the X protocol in Go. There is a new shell also, new MySQL shell. I will show you what it looks like, but you can have command completion in it. You have Python, JavaScript, SQL modes to do your MySQL client. So you do MySQL client like you are using now, but instead of doing SQL commands, you can do JavaScript commands or Python commands. I will show you that. And many other stuff in the new shell. I will go a bit faster on this because this is just, you will have the session, you will have the slides. You have also CRUD operations. So CRUD operation is something that will replace what we are doing with the GSQL to make it much easier for developers to manage your data. And I will show you how it looks like after. So if you want to start the document store, it's very easy. If you have the new shell, you connect. And by default, it will use the X protocol because it needs to have the X plugin, which is by default enabled now in the GA version of MySQL 8. If you are using MySQL 5.7 or previous MySQL 8, you had to load the plugin. In this case, it's not. So by default, you have X protocol plugin enabled and is listening on a different port, which is 3306.0. So this is, we are connected, we create a schema in our session. The schema is called docstore, we use it, and it's there. So you have document store there. You can, any name of a schema, of course, but this is how to do it. There is nothing special to do, nothing to change, just connect to it, and you connect on the X protocol. You can see here that I'm using JavaScript session, I am using SSL in 3306, right? So you have information in the shell. So this is the new shell. Now you can do that. Of course, it's a very long and colored prompt here. It's just to show you. You can change that very easily. You can make it shorter, less color, or whatever you want. Okay. So now we were thinking about, okay, we have this document store. It's nice, but I need to talk about it to people. I go to conference to talk about this document store. So what would be the best thing to do? I said, I need to have documents, right, to show you. And I said, okay, what will be the best document example to use? And I said, okay, I will use the one of Mongodb. because it's they have a good one, which is called restaurant. So there is a collection in MongoDB example. So if you follow all the tutorial of MongoDB, you have these examples, right? So let's take the restaurant collection and just import it in MySQL. So I need the restaurant collection. And also, I told you, the shell is using JavaScript, SQL, or Python. So I said, OK, let's make something in Python to do it. So to load my data, right? So here, thank you, Giuseppe. Giuseppe made this example already in one of his slides for document store. So I was using the same. So here, I will just run Mongo, query. I know that I have about 25 or 27,000 documents. So I will just increase that because I want them all, because by default, Mongo will always show the 100 first, and that's it. So I say, OK, give me them more. I need to change, to remove some metadata that make, if I leave them, they are not a normal JSON document, right? And it creates it on a file. This is how I do. And then in the shell, I said, OK, let's go from JavaScript to Python. I import a module. So this module, it's a module that you have on your system. So from the shell, the developer will be able to import modules to do whatever he wants. Here, I just import JSON module of Python, regular expression. I open the file to read. Then for each line, I see if it's the end of the line. If not, I will just read the line and load this line as a JSON record, and then I add the record on my system. I do that, I have imported all the documents inside MySQL. So very quickly, I have imported all the data. I can already tell you that we are working also on the shell to have a new function that will be able to import even much faster than that all JSON documents that you could have, right? So now that we have the data, let's query it, right? You're here to see how it works. So I'm connected, and I do restaurant.find. So this is a CRUD operation, right? To retrieve the data, I want to find all the restaurants I have on my collection. But it's too much. Like I told you, it's like almost 30,000. So we can add a limit here. So here I do limit 1, and I want the first document. And this is how it looks like. It goes, and it returns me a JSON document that I've stored in my document store by the import we have done in Python just before. So here is the first restaurant in that collection, which is a perfect, valid JSON document, right? So I want to show you some more examples. Now I want to say, OK, let's find, and I want to just retrieve or display the name and the cuisine field, and I want to limit to 2. So the first 2 documents are an Irish restaurant and an American restaurant, right? I can also add a selection criteria. I said here, OK, I want now to find all the restaurants that are served Italian cuisine, and I want it to limit to 2. And this is how it works, very fast, and it goes in it. You can also use the in. You can say, OK, I want to find any restaurant where the cuisine should be Italian or Spanish, right? And it gives me the first 2 restaurants that are 2 Italian restaurants in the collection, very quickly. So the syntax now, it's a bit different than MongoDB, right? So who is MongoDB user here? You're the volunteer to tell me what am I trying to achieve here. Can you read it? Yeah, so here I want to have the French cuisine restaurant, but not in Manhattan, right? I want them to be not in Manhattan, and I want to show name, the cuisine, and borrowed. So this is the elements I want to retrieve, and I want it to limit to 2. And this is the result. So for people that doesn't know MongoDB, what do you think? Is it easy to understand what I'm trying to achieve here, or is it complicated? It's easy? If I want to do it in MongoDB, this is what I need to do to achieve exactly the same, right? So as you can see, I have to say, by default, I will also always show me the ID. So I have to say, I don't want the ID, so I have to put it to 0. So I have to say, if I put the ID to 0, I need the one I want to see, I need to put them to 1 here, right? And the not, it's also different, but it will return me exactly the same result. So our goal is not to replace MongoDB. Our goal is to give an easy way to developers to play with their data, right? And very fast without having to know SQL. So we think this syntax is much easier than this syntax, and this is why the MySQL document store used that syntax above, because we think it's much easier. So the syntax is different, and we have, like you have seen, the find CRUD operation, but we have other. For example, if I remove the first French restaurant, so I use restaurant.remove, right? Made the criteria I want, limit to 2, so I will delete the 2 first restaurants. If I do again the same query, I have 2 different restaurants than this one. Here it was La Baraka and Air France Lounge. Now it's Bar Tabac and Tournesol, because the other one have been deleted. Yes?
Sorry, add the index. Where is add? How to add?
I will show you. I will show you. So the question was, are we using index or not? I will show you. Okay? No worries. So it's not part of the CRUD operation. It's just it's just indexes. So it's the next chapter, I would say. So add a document. This is the CRUD operation from the documentation of MySQL. So we can add document, we can execute it. Here, modify. So we can have a lot of stuff to modify the data. You can bind arguments to your queries and stuff like that. To remove a document, and that's it. So we can work on collection with add, find, modify, remove. But we can also work with CRUD operation now on relational tables, which insert, select, update, delete, like this, right? And you have also index functions you are requesting. I will show you an example, but you can also say, okay, I want create an index, drop an index, get the indexes, or drop index, get index from here too, right? So this is just a summary of all the objects we have in the document store. So like I said, one thing that make the document store very different than the other ones is that we are full ACID, right? So we are full ACID compliant because we rely on the strength and the robustness of InnoDB. So if you don't know InnoDB, it's the storage engine in MySQL to store your data that is full ACID compliant, and it is the one you should use. Forget about my exam, please. So if you use the default here of InnoDB, you will be full ACID, meaning durability is there. So it means if you make a transaction or to your database or to your document store, and it returns, it's committed to the application, if the machine crash, you are sure that when the restore is there, if the MySQL replied you, it has been committed to data, it's there. It maybe needs to make some InnoDB recovery that you do every time you restart your MySQL, but the data is there. So it's not lost, because we use flush lock a transaction commit equal 1. So every time you write data and every time we return it's there, it means it's synced on disk. We have the InnoDB double write buffer on by default, so if the page is corrupted, we can see it when we write it, and we don't miss the data. Sync big lock equal 1, so every time we also write on the binary logs, and if you have slave, it has been sent there too. Certainly if you use a semi-sync on your slave. Transaction isolation, you have all this transaction isolation level that it's possible, so transactions are supported, right? Because there is one very thing important in MySQL, for document store, for InnoDB, for everything we do, is that we do care about your data, right? For us, the data is the most important. So yes, if you enable all that and you have very slow machines, it can be slower. If you have very bad disk, it can be slower. But you should never, if your data is important, you should not relax on durability if you care about your data. If you don't care, you can here play and put it 0 and it will be much faster, but watch out, you can lose your data, right? So if you want to, I want to show you how we can work with transactions. So here I do just session start transaction. I have a transaction. I add here a new document. Document has just name the René. I just do a find. I had already a Fred document in my collection, and then the new one, right? If I do a rollback, session rollback, I find again it's not there. So the document store of MySQL will provide you the all the transaction possibility, commit, rollback, all that kind of stuff. It's there. So this is also something very important. And we were talking about MongoDB. MongoDB is going in that direction too now. But for them, it's much more complicated to do that because it was not designed for that at the beginning. For us, it was designed since the beginning like that. Yes?
Do you need to do something special to
Enable it?
enable transactions?
No, just start the transaction. If not, you're in auto commit 1. And if you do this, you start your transaction. So now, like we said, you should use NoSQL and the CRUD operation, right? But if you still want to do SQL, right, is it possible? Or what can we do? Sorry, Ronald, to make some jokes on your president. It was, so the hidden part. Because you are looking like, So the hidden part of the iceberg now. So if, as a MySQL DBA, you want to know what's behind this, and this is what is maybe, so for the developer, it's enough. You have seen enough. You can do whatever you want already. Now, as a DBA, you want to know a bit more. So what's behind that? So like I said, behind this, we have the JSON data type, right? With native data type since 5.7.8. All these values are stored in a table using UTF-8 and before. They are binary types. So all this conversion, it's all converted there. We don't see anything, and it's done. We have a lot of functions, and we improved that, and we made more and more function. MySQL 8 has even more function than in MySQL 5.7 to work with JSON data types. So we have that. We also have generated and virtual columns. And this is where it's for MySQL DBA, it's very important if you want to do SQL, is that with these generated virtual columns, you can index your JSON data. You can use foreign keys and make constraints, if you want, between your documents. And you can make SQL views on JSON data, all that kind of stuff. It's possible via these generated columns, right? So now the architecture of the document store is that your application has connectors. You need to upgrade to the latest one. You have shell if you have script, because shell you can connect interactively, but also make non-interactive calls. SQL API, if you use the SQL API, you have standard protocol, so it's 3306. If you want to do CRUD and also other SQL APIs, you use the X protocol. And when you use the X protocol, you do go NoSQL. If you do standard protocol, you go SQL. From here, from the standard protocol, you cannot go to NoSQL by yourself. You can get the data, but you cannot run CRUD operations. If you are in X protocol, you can do NoSQL, but you can also do SQL, and I will show you how. So when you are doing SQL, you use relational tables. When you do NoSQL, you are playing with JSON collections. So what does it look like, this collection that we just created together? We have, if I do describe the restaurant table, because we are in SQL, so it's not a collection, it's a table now. We have one field called doc, which is JSON data type, and just underscore ID, which is a var binary 32, which is stored but also generated. So if I create, you can see that this ID comes from the document itself. It goes there in the document and retrieve the underscore ID. If your document doesn't have an ID, it will create one for you. Okay? And it's UTF-8 and before. So the ID, every document needs to have that. It's mandatory. If you don't have an ID, underscore ID in one table, it will not be seen as a collection when you use the X protocol, right? And if you have extra columns other than doc and the generated one, it won't be seen as a collection, but it will be seen as a table. So this is important to know, right? This ID is get out of the document, and it can be generated if you need it, and you have some function to retrieve information about it, right? So what's doing the X protocol, in fact? X protocol is mapping your calls from this CRUD operation to SQL. And this is what they do. So when we create a collection, what happens is exactly the same as we do create table, the name of the collection, then doc JSON, ID, we retrieve it, and we create it TF-ATM before, right? So when we add data, like this, we add the document, what happens? It just, we do an insert in this document column, which is JSON. We add that information. We add the JSON object, right? When we do find, we do exactly a select to get the data out of it. So now, I want to show you some mix between SQL and how we can play with SQL with our JSON data type. So for example here, I want to say, I want to create a new column that I will call borrowed in the table, and this will be a virtual column generated, and I want to retrieve the borrowed from the document, right? So I need to say JSON in quote, JSON extract, doc, blah, blah. I don't like this syntax, so we made it shorter, and this is how you can write it. It's exactly the same, right? So we create a new column that we call borrowed. It's generated, it's virtual, and it comes from the document, and it go to find the data. So now if I do select ID borrowed from restaurant, this column exists, right? So this is one of the first steps we did. So you can create generated column and then do whatever you want with this column, like index, like foreign keys from it. But if you don't want the column itself, we made some other function that I will show you after, that to be able to, without modifying a document or without modifying a collection, to act as a table too. So it is also possible, and now I will answer your question, to create index without SQL syntax. So you can do here, for example, DB restaurant create index. I want an index that I will call it cuisine IDX on the field cuisine. It's required for true or false, can be false. Type, I think it should be a text 20, right? And what it does here, if I check in SQL what it looks like, he has created this generated strange name, because it's a random name generated column, which the key is cuisine index, that it keeps the name I decided on this field, right? And this is how it creates the index for you. Now we can also, when we use SQL, we can make some validation. For example, I can say, okay, now I want to add also a cuisine here, varchar 20, generated always, go retrieve the document, virtual, with validation. What happens with validation? It will say, oh, you have some data here in cuisine that is more than 20 characters, right? So it means that if you want to index the data, if I was not putting the validation, and I was trying to index them, it will complain. It will say, oh, you have to short it, the data. So it is possible, if you really want to do it, you can do this, left, doc, and it with validation, and then it will work. So you can work, you can generate with functions, you can do all that kind of stuff with your document. Then if we do a select, we can see here we have borrowed and cuisine that are two generated columns inside of my collection. Now let's do an explain, and I want to retrieve some data here, and I say, okay, I want to retrieve the name, the cuisine, and borrowed from the restaurant, where Italian cuisine, and in Brooklyn, and I want the first two documents only. So, do you like this query plan? Query execution plan, do you like it? Ronald?
Oh, no.
No, you don't. Who likes it? Yeah, everybody follow Ronald. It's good. So why don't you like it?
You are not using a key and you're retrieving 25,000 rows based on stuff.
Yes. So we do a full table scan to retrieve this data, and we need to read them all to get the data, right? So when we add the index, so here I will create an index, cuisine borrowed index, on the two column generated one I made, right? Then I will create that index. This index will be stored on disk. This is real index, right? And the column are not stored on disk, They are retrieved from the document, but the index, it's real. So it's not virtual. So when I do now the same query, and I check the query execution plan, what I see is that instead of 25,000 rows to read, I have to read only 192 here, because there is 192 restaurants that are serving Italian cuisine in Brooklyn, right? So much faster when you are using the index. So you are able to create the index for that and use the index. Now we have also created some, you have arrays. I told you that we have arrays, and you can have possibility to work with your array, because arrays is always complicated if you want to do that in SQL, right? So here, for example, I say, okay, I want to find the grades from restaurant, the first grade, so all the grades that people made for a restaurant. And then I say, oh, these are the grades. I say, I want the first one only. So it gives me, okay, at that date, he got a grade A with a score of 2. Then I said, okay, but I want the last one, because the first one I don't care. So you get the last one here with the grade of 2. Watch out, in the disk, it seems that the last one that we stored was not by date, but you can order that if you want. Now you can say also range. I want 1 to 2. And you have 1 to 2. You can say 1 to last. All that is possible with the MySQL JSON data type. Now, like I said earlier, remember I said, okay, we have these 2 columns were created, but it's possible to use to generate columns just when we need them, without generating them really, but by extracting them from the document, but let him, the optimizer, or let him, the client see them as a column. We use JSON table. So here I said, okay, I want ID borrowed cuisine, but I want also name. And name, I will create a JSON table, takes the document field, and I want from the parent directly, and I want just create a name that is will be a char 40, and it is $.name. So it's there is no, because here you can put the full path, right? And then you can see name is seized as a column. So I can extract it. But I could have done extract, of course, to make it simple. But if you want to do it on multiple fields, and if you want to make it also to change the type, like it has to be an integer and stuff like that, you are able to do it like this here. Then you can, for example, in this case, I do select the name, but I want to have also address, zip code with the full path. I can get it here. It's possible very easily to do, right? Aggregation. So now, for example, I want to aggregate data, and this is where it's very interesting, because I want to have the average rating of every document. Try to do this in Mongo. Is it easy to do, to aggregate stuff? This looks more complicated to do? Yeah. So here, what we want to do is the average rate. So we give the pass to where are the grades. We take all the grades and we tell them, okay, make a score and make an average of it, right? Yeah. If you do some SQL, I don't think it's that complicated, but maybe it's more complicated. But it's possible, right? But do this in Mongo, and this is even more. Maybe it's more complicated to write because it's a common table expression. But if you want to find all the restaurants by their cuisine, find which one is the best of them and just display that one for each different cuisine. So this is quite, if you want to do this in a NoSQL database, it is very complicated and it will take a lot of time. So here you can do that. So you get all the first one because you're using rank here, and it's very easy to do. So what I want to show you with that is that you can have documents. So your developers store documents, retrieve documents, your application writes that. But if you need to make some reporting, some back office reporting, and you need to get some information, analytics of your data, it is possible to do SQL on that data without creating anything. Yes?
If you want to
Yeah, I don't have the stuff, but this operation, I think it took something like 3 or 4 seconds for this one. I can rerun it later if you want, because yeah, I cut it, but it's very fast. Also, you can do join. So here, for example, I will create a new, just a small table. So we have a document and we have a table. I want to show you that we can join documents and tables together. So I will create a new table that I call cuisine, and I will put all the different cuisine in it, and I will just, for some of them, I will just change a boolean that I say I like it. And I can do, okay, give me all the, here, just to see what the one I like. So I like Italian, Japanese, and Thai food. So here I say, okay, give me the name of the restaurant, right? And I joined, so where they are, what's the cuisine, and I joined them with the my table cuisine where I like them, right? And just limit to 5. So this is the 5 first restaurant I like. So I am able to join documents with relational tables. So if I update, of course, I do like where ID is 47, so I don't like Italian food anymore. I do again the select. It goes there and it's live, right? And so I made from this document store, I was able to make tables, to make relational tables, but I can also do whatever join I want, whatever average aggregation I want to. But then if the application wants me to return a document, I can do that too. So here I do the one I like, for example, and you see I do like equal 1, I like Ethiopian and vegetarian cuisine, and it returned me a document. So you can always return a document. So you from a document extract it as a table, play with it as a table, and then recreate a document on the fly for the application. This is possible to do that, right? So here, for example, yeah, you can do exactly the same from if you are using the X protocol in JavaScript, and you say, oh, no, I do add, remove, insert, but I need to make something complicated that maybe the CRUD operation are not able to provide me. You can always say, okay, I want to do just SQL. So using the X protocol, you say, I want to do SQL, and you can make the query you want to. It will work. It's possible to do that. So here, but this is easy, so you can do it like this too. It's exactly the same, in fact, right? So this is the stuff it's possible to do. So what do I gain when I do this? In fact, I gain the best of the 2 words in MySQL. We have data integrity, we are ICID compliant, durability is very important, isolation, we have atomicity, transaction, SQL, but also schemaless, so no need to do very complicated schemas, flexible data structure, and very easy to use with the CRUD operation. So this is what the developers want to. So as I like, I'm old also, sorry. So, but my HP was never wrong. So if I want to do NoSQL plus SQL, it tells me that it's MySQL that you need to use, right? I have also a blog where you can find 10 reasons to use NoSQL with MySQL. So thank you. If you have any questions, I think we still have no time. And you can share your love for MySQL on social media with #MySQL or DataOps Barcelona. Thank you very much. If you have some question, I can take some now. No question? So thank you very much.